it's interesting when new reference points, well, when old reference points disappear, because I find for myself that it's almost like it's like a nurturing. Okay, it's this you're I know you used the word void at one point, not today, but I've read it in one of your books about the void and silence you use, not having the story. And for me, I'm aware of a completely different reference point. And I can feel it, beginning of feeling it now. What we can say is, I call it ground of being. But it's fragile. And itself, it's not. I understand it's incredibly strong because it's a tangible substance in a way.
That's right.
But in another way, it's very covered. And it's like the covering has been there a long time and it's very strong. And there has to be, it's almost as if I have, it's not that I have a choice of where to put my attention, it's I have a choice of where to be aware I don't have to keep my attention somewhere.
That's beautifully said.
And then it can come back.
That's right.
And my attention is grounded in being.
That's right.
But it's a real in and out process.
Yes.
It goes on for a long time.
It's a tidal wave of conditioning. I mean, it's before this body. It's the way we've been conditioning to live as human beings, to survive. That's why I really feel that this time of awakening is really important, because we have such huge support from so many people who are experiencing this and are saying, yes, you actually can choose in that moment to surrender, to open, to return to the ground of yourself, to the being of yourself. And that grows. And I see that in meetings. Whereas 20 years ago, it was much more of a struggle just to invite people to investigate. Is there a ground of being? Is there a place of peace and fulfillment within you? And I mean, there would be long conversations, and then maybe finally somebody would, oh, it's here. But now it's much faster, because there are more and more people who are saying, yes, this is the ground of being. And if a story comes up 1,000,000 times a day, so what? That's not the point, as long as that story becomes the signal, what's still here? What's always here? What's the truth of myself? Then the story is not the enemy, or the fear is not the enemy. It's an ally. It's a signal to look deeper.
I know you've talked before about it's the time of the ordinary awakening, whereas before it was what we were led to believe anyway. You had to go away in a cave, or you had to be with a master for 30 years or something, and then move on to another master. Now it's the man in the street, woman in the street can awaken, and that's quite a thought, isn't it? It's quite an idea. It's a very fundamental idea.
It's extraordinary. It says, last night I was mentioning it's like a code has been broken. And something that has held us imprisoned in our own thoughts or others' thoughts has been broken. And there's an openness that's possible. Maybe it's evolutionary. I don't really know, but I know that... I mean, we could use the metaphor of how long it used to take to get from London to the States, Yeah. And now how long does it take? It's like that. You don't have to go the old way. There is what's possible, immediate awakening, and then you see what's needed after that, but you know the way home, and you know it's right here. And then the rest is really your choices, what you want, what you love, and what you choose to be true to.
You just mentioned the word prison, and that reminds me that you were actually in prison, weren't you, for 10 days?
I would say jail. I think prison is a heavier thing. Yeah, it was part of an anti-nuclear protest.
Yeah, but it's still pretty scary. You were behind bars.
It was very educational.
Yeah,
mainly because of we were also in a prison. We were jailed in a prison. We knew we were getting out within 2 weeks, so it was like a play in a way.
It was a story.
Yeah, it was a story.
Yeah.
It was like a role play, but we were there with other women who were actually in prison, and they had mixed emotions about us, of course,
Yes.
middle-class women coming in, but there was a connection there, you know. I saw there these women there who made bad mistakes or maybe had no choice, and there was something that was awakened in me in recognizing that I could be there. Any of us could be there. That we don't have to let those bars separate us. And yeah, something started there that has been fulfilled in the prison work of the Gangaji Foundation and Kenny Johnson and John Sherman, who you've been in contact with.
Yeah, I was going to ask you more about your prison work. That really interests me, and I found out because I was in email contact with John Sherman. We haven't talked, and of course he was in prison for many years, and he had quite an extraordinary experience when you were going to a meeting in the prison, and he wasn't even at the meeting, on the way to the meeting, and something happened to him. So tell us a bit about how the prison work is for you.
It's extraordinary. And it was scary going into an all-men's prison the first time I went into it, just because of the deep conditioning. I mean, you go into a door and it slams closed, and first of all, you give up all your possessions and your IDs, and you go into another door and it slams closed, and then you go into, or I went into, a very overcrowded prison, and people are looking at you, and then finally we made our way back to a little chapel, and out of a prison of maybe 3,000 inmates, it should have been maybe 1,500, but there were 3,000, 20 or 30 were in this little chapel. So it's that percentage of the prison population, and it was profound and beautiful. These were men who had made horrible choices in their lives, who had failed and knew it. And in that there was a kind of facing death. They were living a death. Their lives had ended. Their stories had not turned out the way they had planned, and they realized that, and realized that there was possibly something that could serve, and so there was a readiness and an attention and an appreciation for someone coming in, to not exclude them and to recognize them as the same self. So I deeply benefited from it, and I was having a series of meetings in Boulder, Colorado, which was near this particular prison where John was, and I went back and told the people I was meeting with, and they were like thrilled. There was a kind of connection then that was made between inside and outside, between these, what we would have thought of as hardened, scary guys, and these sort of pampered free spirits. There was a connection made that we're the same self, and we want the same thing. And that's to be free. To be free whether we're in prison or to be free whether we're living outside the prison. And so it's fed each other. I'd say both prisoners and non-prisoners benefit from that connection. I know I have.
Well, we live in a kind of a different kind of prison outside until we wake up.
That's right, exactly.
You know, I met Bo Lozoff once, and if you know Bo Lozoff,
yes, we've met.
He of course is very active in working in prisons in America. And I read his first book, We're All Doing Time.
Yeah.
It's such a moving book. This is basically, as you would know, exchange of letters between him and prisoners. And some of these prisoners are really they are mass murderers. They've done terrible things. And they have been in prison a long time, will be there all their life. And the letters, as they start to open up, is just so moving.
It's
just so extraordinary.
Yes.
And I suppose being in a real prison, as opposed to our own mind prison, you're in a double prison, aren't you? You've got your mind in prison, and you're physically in prison. And you've got no option but to look here